Welcome to all of our colleagues and friends from around the world. We're very pleased to know that we have 250 participants who are listening to this initial Peace Talk of Universal Peace Federation. Universal Peace Federation is pleased to announce the launching of this Peace Talks. It's a weekly web conferencing program series which will delve into the timely and significant topics which impact world affairs. And today, we are inaugurating the first Peace Talk program. It is based on a UPF statement which has circulated around the world concerning the coronavirus pandemic. And the topic of today will be a circle of light, moving through and beyond the coronavirus crisis. We have a wonderful roster of panelists today. The first panelist will be Dr. Thomas Walsh, who is the chairman of UPF International. The second panelist is Bishop Munib Younan, who is International President of Religions for Peace. The second panelist, Imam Shamsi, is Director of the Jamaica Muslim Center of New York, and Rabbi Kevin De-Carli, Interfaith Advisor in Switzerland. We are very, very pleased with this roster of panelists, and I know that you will be very, very inspired by all of them. I would like to now turn to Dr. Thomas Walsh, the chairman of UPF International, to explain the UPF's perspective of the coronavirus pandemic.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kagawa. Thank you all for joining this first in a series of webinars. We've called this series Peace Talks, and I hope it will be an important forum that we will benefit from through listening and learning from each other. Currently, we envision having peace talks on a weekly basis. And in terms of programming, we're envisioning about 5 components or areas of emphasis. One is on occasional featuring of expert speakers who could address in a comprehensive way some of the critical issues that UPF is generally concerned with and is concerned with throughout its other conference series. The second area is to feature the work of UPF's associations. As you know, in recent years, under the leadership of our co-founder, Dr. Haq Jahan Moon, we've built a set of associations, the International Summit Council for Peace for former heads of state, the International Association of Parliamentarians for Peace for parliamentarians, the International Interreligious Association for Peace and Development, the International Media Association for Peace, the International Association for Economic Development, and the International Association of Academicians for Peace. And we have, in association with ISCP, the Summit Council for Peace, a First Ladies Association, the International Association of First Ladies for Peace. So each of those associations can use this webinar forum as a way to convene programs. So expert speakers, number one. Number two, giving opportunity to our various associations to be featured. Thirdly, our regions within our UPF International system. We have 7 regions in the Asia Pacific, the Americas, Europe, the Middle East, Africa. And each of those regions from time to time can feature relevant program topics and speakers. Then fourthly, we also want to use this webinar forum for featuring partners that could be representatives of intergovernmental organizations, UN officials, officials from various United Nations agencies, or councils or commissions, representatives of the African Union, the Arab League, ASEAN, and so on. We could also feature partners representing major interfaith organizations like Religions for Peace or the Kaisid Center in Vienna, the Parliament of the World's Religions, and other major NGOs could be featured in our programming. And fifthly, the series can be used as a way to promote capacity building for our wider UPF family globally, addressing topics from fundraising to strategic planning. So that's just a kind of a brief introduction to the concept. Of course, this has stimulated us to move in this direction, as it has stimulated so many to adjust to the circumstances of this current pandemic and crisis, which has found us all working, practicing social distancing, working from home, working in very socially distanced contexts. And as much as that is a burden and a sacrifice, it's also presenting new opportunities for interacting, convening, and communicating as we are all learning. Of course, there's great suffering and pain. Those who have suffered and died from this pandemic, and those who are ill at present and suffering the consequences, those who are suffering from increased anxiety and pain that manifests in myriad ways, not the least of which is the economic suffering that has been brought about through more or less a global recession. So UPF, like many organizations, issued a statement. We called it Circle of Light, a way of understanding the meaning of a word corona and how we move through and beyond the crisis. And in kind of wrapping up my opening comments, I'll talk about the values and what we might call the values and principles. Our guiding values are threefold. We say interdependence, that we are all interconnected. We have not only a natural ecosystem of the wider environment and natural world, but our entire global sociology is deeply interconnected economically, politically, and we're being very much brought to the forefront is that even issues of healthcare and transmission of disease and how we work together interdependently is extremely important. Secondly is mutual prosperity, that we advocate a world where we are increasingly moving toward shared benefits of all the blessings and conveniences, the technological advances, so that the whole human family is not deeply divided by dramatic differences of wealth across the globe. Thirdly, universal values, that despite our differences along a wide range of ethnic, racial, religious, national, cultural, political, or philosophical divides, there is common ground, and there are core universal values that we share, and we should work to emphasize and highlight and affirm those universal values. In the Circle of Light statement, we underscore 4 principles, kind of general principles of best practices that call us to move toward greater unity. Let's try to build bridges. It emphasizes, in addition to unity, dialogue. Let us not cut off from one another. Let us engage in speaking and listening as we're doing. Let's practice mutual respect. In that process of dialogue, it will bring greater enlightenment, enrichment. We will learn from one another by listening. Others will learn from us. So let us keep that principle at play throughout these very difficult and times of great anxiety, and to many a time of great suffering. Cooperation, that we seek rather than to divide. How do we build bridges to reconcile, to promote peace, so that we can live together in harmony? And compassion is the fourth. So unity, cooperation, dialogue, and compassion. Let us empathize with one another, the members of our families, the members of our communities, our nation, the people of other nations, the people who are different from us, knowing we are all in this situation together. Let us respect one another and love one another. Our panelists today, I think, can elaborate on these points very effectively. I wanted to just offer brief words of introduction, both to the webinar series and to this document, The Circle of Light, which I hope many or most of you have had a chance to review. So with that, I'll conclude and look forward to hearing from our other panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Walsh, for your remarks and your perspective on UPF's ability to strengthen and give resilience to people who are suffering within the pandemic and for the recovery efforts from the pandemic. I'd like to also announce that question and answer session will take place after the panelists, and anyone who has a question can email it to peacetalks@upf.org. I'd like now to introduce the next panelist, Bishop Munib Younan, who is the International President of Religions for Peace. Bishop, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Walsh, for inviting me, and thank you, Mrs. Kagawa, that you also asked me to give some remarks. I think we are celebrating still as Christians the week of Easter, or the week of resurrection, and it's very appropriate that we start this, from Jerusalem, where the events of the resurrection have taken place. And I think, I would like just to comment what Dr. Walsh has said. I think this time we have noticed more than ever that we are interdependent with our humanity. I think sometimes we forgot our humanity. We are interdependent. There is no leader, there is no rich or poor, no white or black, no south or west. We are all one humanity. And that is very important that we are reminded. I don't want to give the credit to the corona, but I want to give the credit to God, who reminds us of our humanity, you see. I have 3 points just, to mention. The first point is, there are many calculations, many analysis of the situation. There is some people who are thinking of a conspiracy theory that is happening in the world. Others, they have contacted us and said that this is the eschatological time, the end times are now coming. Others are living in panic. And so you find many people around the world, Christians, Muslims, Jews, or whoever, Hindus, whatever it is, they are just giving, a kind of interpretation. And they forget, one important thing, that God does not punish human being. God is not an angry God who sends a virus to revenge from us. God is a God of love. And that's very important to emphasize it at this time, that we are believing in a God who loves his humanity, and he will not allow his humanity, to evaporate and to vanish with a virus like this. On the contrary, we need always to think of God as a God of love. So for me as a Christian, I would say God does not reveal himself through a virus, but God reveals himself through Jesus Christ, through our humanity, and that's very important. Secondly, I think it is a time, my second point would be, it's a time to have of prayer and, reflection. I remember that we had, last week we had also Religions for Peace had interfaith prayer just on the Zoom for 1.5 hours. We asked all traditions to pray. This was very important. I think sometimes in this crisis, we have to ask ourselves in prayer and reflect, did we build a new Tower of Babel? Did we, did we forget that there is a God of love? I think maybe we have built, maybe we have created other gods, weapon, economy, money, power, hegemony, discrimination, conflicts. I think maybe these became, only our gods. And we forgot that there is a living God. Maybe, I don't want to say God is testing us, but I want to say maybe we have to reflect in our prayers, to come back to our senses, to strengthen, the God of love in our lives. And that's important to see. God is more important than anything else. I think we have forgotten that point, which was, for me, is very crucial. My third point would be, I think we are noticing that we are very appreciative of UN, General Secretary General Guterres, who has called for a ceasefire for, for all conflicts in the world, and so that we can join efforts in finding, in combating this virus. I think his call is very meaningful. I really appreciate to see that today everybody is putting efforts because our humanity is in danger, under threat. All are putting, we are noticing that some, enterprises who never did anything with medicine or with masks, they are changing their work. We are noticing that in many countries, that everybody is putting their efforts. I hope, and also we are very thankful for the medical staff all over the world that they are putting their lives to save lives. I think we are very appreciative of that. I hope this same efforts of interdependence, of interconnection, of responsibility, of compassion will continue, that we can more and more work together for our humanity, maybe also to combat poverty, to combat, also to eradicate many contagious diseases in the world, not only this coronavirus, there are others in Africa, in Asia, and so on. Maybe to speak about disarmament, which is a problem. Instead of putting our money for arms, why can't we put it for health and education, which we have noticed they are missing? I think how to bring peace for the Middle East, for the Palestine-Israeli conflict. How can we bring peace at the moment, to put all effort? If we join efforts together, we can really achieve something for the humanity, for justice, for peace, for reconciliation, and for the dignity of every human being. I think this time of reflection is very important for us. I want just to conclude by saying, our God is God of love. He loves us. He loves our humanity. But are we ready to love him as he loves us? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bishop Younan, and your very wonderful remarks, and emphasizing again the God of love that is overseeing humanity through this crisis and our need for reflection and meditation. Thank you so much. Now I'd like to turn to the second panelist, Imam Shamsi Ali, who's director of the Jamaican Muslim Center of New York. You have the floor, Imam Ali, you have the floor.
Thank you so very much, Genie. And thank you, Dr. Walsh, for inviting me. Yesterday, basically, that I got this message to join but it's very important for me to join because I think we are in a very unprecedented moment. And it is very important to discuss on issues related to this pandemic. So let me begin by reminding all of us that which is now declared as the global pandemic is truly tremendously challenged each and every one of us. Many of our brothers and sisters are sick. Many have died. Economies collapsing. Many millions have lost their jobs. But I think as religious people, the most painful one that we cannot congregate anymore in our house of worship at the moment. And that itself represents the magnitude of the challenge we are facing at the moment. So I have some point as a reflection. The bishop mentions beautifully about the love of God, and I think we all believe in God's love. Because of that love too, God reminds us from time to time. And one of the things that God is reminding us at the moment is, I think for the past years, we have forgotten really our real God. Secularism has dominant in humans' life at the moment. And God have been kept to the side. Everything is about, as the bishop mentioned, that God had been either economy, materials, science, knowledge, or even our own egoistic tendencies. All these have become God, and we push aside the real God in our life. And I think God reminds us from time to time. There is a verse in the Quran, God mentioned that he sent this type of calamity from time to time, certainly not to punish, but to remind. And as a result, God says in the Quran, لَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَضَرَّعُونَ, so that they may be humble, so that they may remember that we are humans and we have limitations and weaknesses. The only one who is unlimited and the most powerful is the Almighty God. And so I think this is a good reminder from the Almighty God to remind us once again of our own reality as human beings, of our own limitations, that there is no option but turning to one and Almighty God. We are all under one God. And it is very important to realize once again that this world is in need of God. God is not a slogan, is a reality, is an essence of life. And I think each human should realize from now on that we need that God, the God of mercy, the God of love, the God of compassion, the God that unites us all, not divides us. The next one is, it also reminds us about the point that Dr. Walsh mentioned, basically. And if I refer this to the Holy Quran, possibly have heard this many times before from different speakers, but the Holy Quran emphasized the three main principles that Dr. Walsh mentioned. O mankind, we created you from a male and a female, and we made you into many nations and tribes, so that you get to know one another. Now, the word "we made you" represent that God is there involved. He's the one who made us. In other words, that we have to acknowledge principally as a fundamental that God is the one who is behind everything. And then he say, we created you from a male and a female, one male and one female, Adam and Eve, as we know. And this is the meaning of one family, one human family. So it acknowledged the existence of God and the existence of one human family, but also acknowledges the existence of differences. A bishop just mentioned it. This is the way he presented, that there is no black, there is no white anymore. I think the Quran still emphasizes the existence of all these differences, but these differences means for us to unite. We made you into many nations and tribes so that you get to know one another. Now, the word getting to know one another is very essential, because this represents every single point that the main principle that Dr. Walsh mentioned. Getting to know is not about what is your name, where are you from, what is your religion, what is your nationality. But number one, our commitment or our willingness to acknowledge the existence of others and to appreciate what others can share with us. This is about appreciation. So, and number two, a political will to share with one another, sharing with one another. Because as Dr. Walsh mentioned, that we are living in a very globalized world, and interconnectedness and interdependence is something that's unavoidable, that everyone is interconnected, everyone is interdependent from one another. You can imagine this corona started in Wuhan, spread all over, and affected poor nations, weak nations, powerful nations, even the most superpower nations. And nobody can say, you know, I am immune from it. In other words, it teaches us very clearly that we are all interconnected. There is no exception here. Don't say that you are powerful and you don't want to work with other people around us. We are interconnected and deeply interdependent. So it is very important that the word ta'aruf is translated into a political will to establish a global partnership. Global partnership. And I think the best way to face this pandemic is to build a global partnership. And there should no one feel that they can solve the problem. And I'm sorry to use the possibly a little bit political, but narrow nationalism is not an option at the moment. What we need to see is that we are all one humanity with all differences that we have. We are all one family with all differences that one have. This world has become a small house for us, a small home for us. And there is only one option in front of us. Either we let the people to destroy it, or build joint hand, and serve it together. And so once again, I think in conclusion, just 3 points. Number one is that we need fundamentally to return to our God. We are all under one God, number one. Number two, that we must look into our future. Knowledge is very necessary, but we don't have to be Superman and Superwoman. And number three, global partnership is needed to fight against this global pandemic. And thank you so very much.
Thank you, Imam Shamsi Ali, for your precious perspective, reminding us once again that we are one universal family under one God, beyond any perspective of religion. And it's just a very precious perspective that we should all work together beyond any differences. Thank you for your remarks. I'd like to also remind everyone once again to submit your questions to peacetalks@upf.org if you have any questions that you want to address to any of the panelists. I'd like to now turn to Rabbi Kevin De-Carli, who is the Interfaith Advisor in Switzerland, to deliver his perspective. Rabbi, please have the floor.
Thank you, Genie. I must excuse myself. I hope you can understand me despite my current handicap. I am in an isolation tent as this morning I started showing first signs of a corona infection myself. I was found violently coughing up blood and not being able to breathe anymore, and now being treated. Although the recent outbreak of COVID-19 seems unlike anything we have seen before, plagues and epidemics as such are nothing new. In fact, it's been a lot worse in the past. And to begin, I'd like us to have a small look at epidemics throughout history to put this situation into somewhat of a perspective and give some Jewish insights on how leaders could respond. Because as humans, it is our very nature to be forgetful, to alter memories, such as concerning plagues, such as concerning the Spanish flu. Looking back to our oldest sources in the book of Numbers, after Korach's rebellion, a plague strikes the Jewish people and thousands begin to die. What Moses does is he tells Aaron to quickly take a fire pan with incense, go to the midst of the congregation and atone for their sins. Aaron stands between the living and the dead, it says, and the Ketoret, the plague, is halted. Well, how did Moses know what the incense would do, and how did he know it would avert the plague? The Talmud relates it that when Moses went up to heaven, he received the Torah, and each angel bestowed upon him a blessing. And the blessing that Satan bestowed upon him was to know which herb had healing powers and which one would not. This goes for me in a category in things that might have worked in the past, but are unlikely to work in the current situation. In the past, medicine, magic, and superstition were hardly distinguishable. Today, we are in the fortunate situation that we can draw some very clear lines between them. Already the Talmudic sages tried to give reasonable advice to people, saying that basically, if you are around a sick person, be careful from the fluids that come from them. If he is coughing, try not to stand in the direction of which the wind is coming, and not to enter the house of a sick person unprotected. This goes so far that in the summer of 1850 in Vilnius, on Yom Kippur, the holiest fast day in the Jewish calendar, Rabbi Israel Lipkin was concerned that fasting would weaken the people and make them more vulnerable to disease. And instead of reminding them of the obligation to God to not forget Him, to do their service, he hung placards throughout the city of Vilna, urging all who felt weak to eat on the fast day. And according to some accounts, he publicly made a kiddush and started eating some cakes to encourage all those in need to follow suit. What he did there was breaking with one of the most holy laws in Judaism to save people's lives. Because to them, they were first and foremost people, and he was responsible for them. And as a final note, during times like these, people can often become marginalized and overlooked. So let us do our part to ensure that doesn't happen in our communities and in our neighborhoods. As Rebbe Tzimchania states, she was the mother of the future Lubavitcher Rabbi. Their main house is currently in New York. When his son was 20 years old, a typhus epidemic broke out, and he left his studies to assist those who were ailing, bringing them aid, and himself and organized others to do so. He paid a very steep price. He contracted the illness and with extremely high fever, and even in his fevers, he still uttered words of Hasidut, may God bring strength and healing to all. I am starting, is this the bell that I'm hearing? No? Oh, in times of crisis, humanity comes first. As an example, I am currently serving the Swiss Army. I left my studies when I was called by my country. In the army, we do not distinguish between religion, confession, or spiritual background. Rather, it supports each and every citizen equally, berates, accompanies, and supports them according to their human needs. One for all and all for one is our national motto. United we stand and united we serve. It is our duty to do so. We are ready to support the civil healthcare institutions, and our Hospital Battalion 5, with its companies, cares for, helps, and protects the citizens of our country wherever it can. The Corona crisis, it is a mirror to a society. It shows us how fundamentally human in nature our reactions and responses are, and that at the core of all religions and institutions, there is no greater mystery, no incomprehensible power. Just give me a second, please. I will try to make the noise stop. Do you still hear me?
Yes, please continue, Rabbi.
Thank you. It is at the core of our fundamental human nature and our reactions and responses, on the core of all religions. There is no greater mystery. There is no incomprehensible power. It's only the fundamental human nature and fear. Because didn't anybody ever tell you, says the Talmud, fear is a superpower. Fear can make you faster, cleverer, stronger, and it is so very human to be afraid. But it is our reaction to fear that makes a difference. Unfortunately, in times of fear, people tend to seek the aid of an authority. Maybe it works well. Is for medical questions you consult a healthcare professional? Good. But sometimes, and that is the dark side of many religions, spiritual authorities give simpler answers than other experts by providing supernatural causes and solutions. And far too often, they end in exceeding far more needs on the people than they had before. For now, they don't only have to take care for their health, but also fear for the eternal punishment of their immortal soul after their physical death. So in times of crisis, don't be religious, just be human. As for myself, I do not consider myself to be a good man, not a bad man either, and I am not an ambassador, no rabbi, and certainly, despite my rank, not an officer. You know what I am? I am an idiot, just passing through, helping out, learning. My roles do not define who I am. I define how the faces I am wearing are filled. I do not need armies or title for that. I never have, because I got them. Always them, the men and women I meet, I live with, I cry and I laugh with, by not being religious, but by being human. What's all the wealth and faith in the world good for if we act as petty and selfish as before? Because love, it is not an emotion. Love is a promise to put one's other's needs before ours. And why should you do that all? If religious is out of the way, placed in second row, do it because it is the right thing to do, because it is decent, and above all, because it is kind. It is just that, just kindness at the base that we need. Take us soldiers. If we run away, good people will die. If we stand and fight and fulfill our duty, some of them might live. Maybe not many, maybe not for long, and maybe there is no point in any of that. It is not up to us to know, but it is the best we can do in our current situation. And so I am going to do it. And I will stand here doing it until it kills me. And apparently I started coughing blood this morning and I have quite a high fever. So there is a certain chance in that and a certain irony. And this is also something the Corona crisis reminded people of, especially here in the Western countries. Sometimes, someday, you are going to die. And how will that be? Have you thought about that? What would you die for? Who am I is where I stand is where I fall, and I fall, you stand with me. These people that we meet in the hospitals, they are terrified. Maybe we can help them a little. Why not just at the end, just be a little bit kind? In the face of fear, the very human nature, never be cruel, never be cowardly. Remember that hatred is always foolish. Acting out of kindness and love is always wise. And remember that pain, the injustice, the terrible things that happened in the past and that we are so afraid of, that we try to forget, hold on to them till they burn you and say, no one else will have to live like this. No one else will have to feel this pain, not on my watch. So remember not to be religious or zealous or nationalist. Just be human. So what do we learn from Corona in the end? That the value of a nation, of progress, is not measured by industries. It is measured by the value we place on a life, an unimportant life at that, a life without value. That is what defines a nation. That is what defines us as a species. And so I appeal to you, to all of you, listening to me today in the name of our personal convictions or the religions which we owe allegiance to, because we all have in common a respect for integrity of humankind, because we have in common the rejection of hatred and violence, because we have in common the hope for a better and more just world. I appeal to you, representatives of religious communities, of civil society. I appeal to you, the leaders of this world, whatever your field of influence may be, to strictly adhere to the following principles that we learned from Corona. Refuse to invoke religious or spiritual power to justify violence. Refuse to invoke religious or spiritual sources to justify discrimination and exclusion. And refuse to exploit or dominate others by means of strength, intellectual capacity, or spiritual persuasion, wealth, or social status, grounded in the Swiss tradition of welcome, refuge, and compassion. My appeal is to all whose convictions are in accordance with
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you for, we deeply respect you for joining us despite your sickness. I think everyone joins me in prayers, in giving prayers for your healing and full recovery. Deeply respect, and I think we've caught your message. You're giving up your life for others, and your commitment is laudable, and we really know that this message is for all of us to give that kind of commitment to others. That's the way we're going to get through together to solve the problem of the pandemic. I'd like to deeply thank all the panelists for coming here today, and I'd like to turn the floor over to Bill Selig, who I've seen there's a lot of reflections from the audience because of this amazing panel, and I'd like Bill Selig to field the questions and bring forward the questions to the panelists to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Kagawa. Hello, everybody. Yes, we're getting quite a few questions here, and it was a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. This is a question from, pardon me for the mispronunciations, Arcia Henry Puspita, a tourist guide, and he is asking this question to Imam Shamsi Ali. The question is, what should we do as one family to have global partnerships after COVID-19?
Certainly, as we said, that COVID-19 has reminded us a lot of things. Number one, it reminds us about the existence of God and how God is powerful, God of mercy, God of compassion and love. And if we do believe in that type of God, that must be translated into our own actions, characters, that we have to be loving and compassionate to one another. You can imagine at these very challenging moments, millions of people out of jobs, they don't have anything to support their family. You know, we're our heart at the moment. Governments, all of us, without an exception, basically, for those who are able to help your brothers and sisters around, do it. But more importantly, I think Corona had taught us that unity is not uniformity, certainly, but unity is deeply needed in time that we are challenged. And Corona is just one of the challenges that we have in life. I think the most important challenge we are facing sometimes is about divisions, as the Rabbi emphasized on the importance of unifying ourselves, or coming to being together as one human family. Divisions on different lines, religious divisions, including ethnic divisions, national divisions, skin colors, cultures, and others. And I think we are deeply divided. Corona had taught us that when we have a common enemy, that we can come together and united. Corona have seen that as Corona at the moment is our common enemy. Why can't we make racism, poverty, divisions itself, war, and different violence around the world at the moment is our own common enemies, so that we can come together to fight all of them? So a lot of things that we can be done after Corona, so that we can, let's go back to our common family, and that is human family, as the Rabbi emphasized.
Thank you, sir. This is a question from Dr. Michael Jenkins from Upf International. It's a question for Bishop Younan. He asks, what cooperation is going on in Jerusalem between the Muslim, Christian, and Jewish religious leaders to help the communities through the virus?
Thank you. I think first of all, I would like to wish the Rabbi here that quick recovery, and may God really have mercy and give him full healing. I think it's a moment also to pray for him for healing. I think that's very important at this moment for the Rabbi. I really appreciate that he is present, but we have to pray for him because he will have 2 difficult weeks, but I hope the Lord will touch him and heal him. This is my prayer for him. And secondly, I think, you know, we are locked down now. We are following instructions of 2 governments, and we have been in contact together, Muslim and Christians and Jews. And we are thinking, you know, to have on the Zoom, of course, we cannot meet each other now. On the Zoom, maybe to have prayers together. You know, especially last week, the Jewish people celebrated Pesach, and we celebrate Easter. At the moment now, it's the Orthodox Good Friday today, and on Sunday is the Orthodox, you know, Easter, and next week starts Ramadan. So I think we are cooperating together for the welfare of our common humanity. You know, I remember just to mention it very shortly. I remember an Israeli, you know, TV presenter who said the other day on the TV, you know, look now, there are no borders. We are one humanity, and we need really to show it in our everyday life. I think to pray together, to work together, and follow the instructions of the governments at the moment is very important for all of us. That's what we can do. Once it's open and we can get over it, then it's different. And secondly, we want to pray also for infected to get healing, and to pray for all those who are living in fear and living in panic, because I think there are many. You know, today I've heard at CNN that in United States they are buying all these, you know, kind of pills that will give them, you know, alleviate their fear and so on, which is spiking in its in selling them. So I think we have really to use this time all together to pray and to give comfort to our people.
Thank you, sir. This is a question from Mr. Raja Mohan from Singapore. He's asking about the environment. The question is, we all agreed that God is love. How can we, the people on earth, help to preserve the environment? Because of this pandemic, most of the pollution has come down. Polluted rivers are cleaner, skies are brighter, trees have been safe. How can we continue this after this crisis? This is an open question.
There is a concept in the Islam known as istiqama. And istiqama means being consistent. If COVID-19 is teaching us quite a lot now, and we realize that it is very important to discipline ourselves, to keep our health, to appreciate the blessings of God, and to appreciate the friendship that we have now. Being away, distant from one another is truly painful. We appreciate all this, not only at the moment, but being consistent to appreciate this afterwards, including appreciating the environment. That is our sole responsibility, to appreciate the environment. In Islam, the responsibility of Khilafah is not political. It is about how to save our world so that we can build this world as a heaven for everybody to live. And so protection of environment is a fundamental responsibility in our faith. And we have to continue that. Thanks to COVID, if COVID really reminds us on its importance.
Well, I would like to add here and to say, this is a very important question about the environment. And we are noticing that the environment is little bit, you know, healing, while everything is stopping in the world and everything. But, you know, this needs, first of all, personal. How can personally we deal with the environment? And secondly, how can religious leaders cooperate on the issue of ecology and environment, climate change, global warming, you know, using renew ways of for renewable, you know, energy in our world. I think these are important things that religious leaders, for me, it's a religious issue, not only a political issue, to work for the welfare of our environment, because when God had created our world, he created it and asked us to be responsible, not to consume it irresponsibly. And thirdly, I think we need also to unite and cooperate and pressure the governments, including the United States and China and Russia, all these superpowers, you know, that they should cooperate together with COP25, with the UN, with everybody, in order to sign together how can we protect our environment. I think there is a big responsibility lies on the governments. If they are irresponsible and they everything take it politically and don't respect the humanity, the humanity in which the humanity that we are all sharing, I think we religious leaders must speak truth to power and challenge them by working together and cooperating and interconnecting for the welfare of our environment.
Thank you, sir. Our next question is from Mrs. Caroline Hanschen from the Women's Federation in Switzerland. This is directed to the Rabbi. She asks, what have you noticed among soldiers during this time? Is there more room for God and religion in the military than previously? And how do you, as a rabbi, how is your role as a spiritual caretaker evolving among the multi-religious and agnostic groups?
First of all, do you understand me? Because
Yes.
I had to change the device. Very good. Thank you, Caroline, for the questions. I will get you back on that. It is the fear that brings people to ask questions about the sense of what they're doing and the primal origins that move the universe. It is mostly those soldiers that I visit that are working with the sick and people in the hospitals and that see dead people from the first day of their engagement. Some of them are 19, 20 years old and have never so much as seen a severely sick people, and were from one moment to the other forced to carry dead bodies out of a bed in order to make room for another sick and dying person. It is these moments that make them question their fundamental beliefs, and there I adhere to the principles of the Swiss Army, not to distinguish between the religion, the sexual, the cultural orientation of a person, but to see them as a fellow human being who is in need of aid. And myself being the person with the adequate resources to support them, to help them in the way they need to be helped, without wanting to pressure any religious institution or any religious motives on them, just by giving themselves the ability to, by their own strength and by their own intention and by their own good heart, find what they need to fight to stand through the situation. And I have, of course, many atheists and agnostics that are questioning my position, that are coming to seek the dialogue with me, because I am present, and usually in their lives there was never a religious or spiritual person present. So this is a great chance for us to bring the different edges of our communities together. I'm sorry I cannot continue my answer, but I hope, Caroline, that you're satisfied with what I managed to say.
Thank you, Rabbi. This is a question from Mr. Thomas McDivitt from the Washington Times. It's directed to Dr. Walsh and all of the distinguished panelists. He's asking, what are your thoughts on how UPF International and UPF's chapters in each region and nation can contribute leadership through these kinds of thought leadership and heart-moving discussions? Dr. Walsh?
Thank you, Mr. McDivitt, not only for your work at the Washington Times, and also very much thank you during this recent World Summit in Korea, where you led the International Media Association for Peace and played a central role with the International Association for Economic Development. One of our great strengths is, as you might call it, convening power. And I think we want to continue, of course, this webinar series. We underscore core principles and values that I think we're not the only ones doing it, but I think we contribute to creating a global culture, hopefully, that emphasizes interdependence, mutual prosperity, universal values, underscores dialogue, building bridges. There's a lot of polarization out there, I think, on all levels, and it's quite complex, and there's a combination of political, economic, social, cultural factors going on. This coronavirus in some ways is like a certain kind of pause button. It exposes a lot of the world's corruptions and inadequacies and sometimes lack of transparency and certain weaknesses that we see in all of our institutions. So I think UPF can create some kind of cultural space of reconciliation and hope, encouragement, dialogue, bringing people around the table, not to kind of provoke and attack, but try to understand mutual respect, cooperation. These are kind of our principles. We will keep applying those. We're looking beyond this virus because the massive disruption that includes so much suffering is unmistakable. At the same time, we're looking for those silver linings that will help us to become wiser, smarter in working together for peace. And through these kinds of dialogues, I hope we really can move in that direction. But I'll stop there and give the floor to other panelists who may want to add to what I've said.
May I just add here, you see, of course, I cannot speak on behalf of UPF, but I can say, you know, one important thing, we need to ask the governments more to cooperate today in order that their cooperation can help not only strong nations, but also the weak nations. I want just to mention today, Mrs. Van Loyola from the EU, she apologized on behalf of the EU that even the European countries were not, when Italy got the virus, they did not cooperate enough. And she said we should change behavior. I hope that all of us will support and not to boycott it, and not to stop funding from it. Because it's very important to change, because the challenge is not for the Americans only, but for the whole world, and especially the people in the South, in Africa and Asia will suffer more than people maybe in the North or than in the North. We need to ask all governments, strong and weak, superpowers and no powers, to cooperate together for the sake of our humanity. That's the message which I carry for you. And please, let us, as religious leaders and people of goodwill and conscience, work together for this end.
Thank you. This will be our final question from Mr. Eric Goslin. He's asking, what can religious leaders do to fight the corona? Imam, would you like to deal with that?
Let me jump in. I think if I wanted to answer with one word, again, I just wanted to say that Corona basically is teaching us to be humble enough. Humbleness is necessary. Humbleness is one of the pillars that we need to establish in order for us to get interconnected. Because when we feel that we are everything and we can do by ourselves, that we are not motivated to work with other people. And you see some leaders in the world that when the people are making mistakes, they simply run away. That is not solution. And I'm sorry to criticize the President of the United States when it's upholding the fund for the WHO, simply because with an assumption that there is some mistake that they committed. I don't know if it's my right, but it's not the right way. We need to be humble. And when we come to the word humbleness, at least there are three things. And I think all panels have spoken about. Number one is care, that we need to build a sense of care with everyone else. Number two, it's share. We need to share. And number three is appreciation. We need to appreciate for whatever anyone can share or can contribute with us. And so it is fundamentally important that we come back together to join hands. And that is the only solution to this pandemic. Coming together, build a global partnership. There is no one is superpower here. Everybody is being affected. The United States is the epicenter at the moment. And New York City being as the center of capitalism now is the epicenter of this pandemic. And I think it teaches us very clearly that no one is powerful enough without the others. We need to come back and unite it.
Thank you. Thank you. Shall we just have one final word from the bishop and then from the rabbi, and then we'll finish?
Bill, I'd like to also, at the end, I'd like to turn the floor to Dr. Walsh for his final words.
Of course.
Afterwards. Thank you.
Maybe Dr. Walsh can start, or me?
Please go ahead.
Go ahead, Bishop.
I'm just going to make a couple of announcements at the end.
Okay, fine. You know, my final, word will be very short, and saying, let us more trust our God, who is God of love. And it's time for all of us, whatever is our religion, even if we are agnostics, let's trust that there is a God of love who loves our humanity. And secondly, I would say, let us cooperate together for the welfare of this humanity that God gave us to be responsible for. And thirdly, let us challenge governments to work together at this moment. That's really shortly my word. But I tell you, I want to emphasize again, I want to pray for all the infected, especially now, our beloved Rabbi. We have to pray for him that he may have strength and power to get over it, and to all infected in every country. And secondly, we want to pray for researchers and doctors to find the vaccine and the medicine, and to thank all medical staff and all people who are putting their life for the sake of others. May God bless you all and be with you for the sake of our shared humanity and shared well-being.
Oh, do you want me to say also? Okay, I just wanted to say at the end that, as we say here in America, that at the end of the tunnel, there is always a shining light. Let's keep hope and optimism. We say inshallah, God wills, this will end soon. So let's pray for one another. May God heal our world, and may those who are sick be healed and be cured, especially our dear Rabbi. May God heal you and cure you as soon as possible. And to all those who are sick in the hospital, at home, or anywhere else. For those who died, may their family be strengthened and given patience by God. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. What else is there to say? Thank you very much, Bishop. Thank you very much, Imam. In my speech, I've been very direct and somewhat humanist. I would like to end by contrast with a blessing. It's the last blessing in the book of blessings of the Talmud Takat Bachot. I pray for my brothers and friends, let there be peace.
Hashem Elokeinu, Avak Shato Evlo. Hashem knows le'amo yiten, Hashem yiroch kulanu b'shalom.
Thank you, Rabbi. I'd like to now call on Dr. Walsh for closing thoughts. Thank you.
Just very briefly, a sincere and warm-hearted, very strong appreciation to these panelists. Truly, you exceeded all my expectations. I knew you were great, but you're really shining for all of us today during this very serious time. So I applaud you and thank you. I thank all the attendees. I've been reading the chat lines and gaining a lot of inspiration and insight from those. So we'll be convening these webinars on a weekly basis. Our plan for our next webinar will address the issue of the coronavirus from the point of view of governance, and particularly talking about governance. We've heard a number of references to how governments need to cooperate better, and I'm sure that will be addressed in our next webinar. So signing off with much appreciation and encouragement, and wish you all Godspeed, God bless, be safe and be healthy.
I'd like to thank all the panelists for this very, very moving experience for all of us. And I'd just like to express that I hope everyone joins us again for the next Peace Talk, and we really look forward to seeing you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.